My name's Jim, and I collect all sorts of fossils and things, but my favourites are Megalodon shark teeth fossils. They're from an extinct giant shark that grew up to at least 60 feet, died out about 2 million years ago, and the teeth are often very well preserved and they're quite spectacular. And I've got several of these. This is quite a big one from South Carolina in the USA. A lot of these teeth, when they're found, are broken. This one's relatively whole. I'll show you a broken one. There we are. That's a broken one. You can see it's quite a chunk. Probably a third of the tooth is missing, and the remaining tooth is in beautiful condition, and it's a nice fossil in its own right, but not so good for display purposes because it's broken. It won't stand up, and I got hold of a couple of broken ones several years ago and thought, how can I make them look a bit more presentable? So I decided to restore one using some bronze, some cold cast bronze. Now what I want to show you in this video is how to do that. I'll show you one I've prepared earlier. There we are. Similar tooth. This one's from Georgia. And you can see a similar piece broken away. They often break in a similar plane, and that's obviously a bit of a line of weakness in these teeth. Some of them break when they're found or during the fossilisation process, but a lot of them I think actually split when they're in the shark's mouth, and they're actually broken when they're shed. But there's the difference before and after, and we'll take you through in stages how I do it. There's probably lots of ways of doing this, but I'm going to show you the way that I've worked out that works best for me. It certainly makes a much more presentable fossil. It doesn't necessarily increase the value of the fossil, so it's not really much good as a money making idea. The broken fossils are a lot cheaper to buy. It's probably a way of getting yourself a nice big tooth for a lot less money. If you sell them on, you probably just about cover your costs of doing it, but you're not going to make money. People don't like restored fossils so much, and with restoration I prefer it if you can see what's being restored rather than these hidden restorations, which are kind of dishonest in a way, some of them. I'd rather have a broken tooth than a tooth that's been done up with some secret restoration. I like this. It makes it more of a piece of art as well as a fossil. You can see what's the natural fossil, you can see what's been restored, and it looks nice and it feels nice. It's got a nice heavy weight to it. I use a very heavily filled bronze resin to do this, so they really do have a decent weight to them. The bronze itself tarnishes. This has started to tarnish. It goes quite dark, and it can be repolished just like ordinary metal, bronze and brass. You can repolish it and bring it up, or you can let it tarnish so it gets the aged look. But I'll take you through stage by stage how I've done it. First stage is to build up the missing part of the tooth using what I'm going to use is some dental wax, and this is the stuff. Comes in sheets, and it's special wax that's modified especially for dental technicians and dentists to make dentures out of. The denture's made out of this, and once the patient and the dentist are happy, a mould is invested, or a mould is taken, the wax is removed, and then acrylic is poured in. So we're doing much the same thing really. It's an ideal wax for modelling. You can carve it, melt it, shape it, and it is quite hard wearing, and it's ideal. It's what it's designed for, is for making models and things. So that's the plan, and I'm going to melt the wax and build up the missing part. There's other ways of doing this, as I said. Because we're casting, I've got to make the missing part, make a mould and then remove the missing part and put the tooth back in. But you could just, if you wanted, you could just build up this missing part using epoxy putty, something like milliput or one of the other sort of clays, modelling clays that's going to set. But of course you won't be able to use bronze if you do that. The idea of the restoration that I'm doing is that it's going to be bronze, so that's why I want to actually make a cast, do a mould. Okay, well the next stage I'll actually show you a few tips on how to mould this. Here's a missing piece, if you see, of one I've done before. That's the piece of wax that I made to replace the missing part. Almost fits this exactly. Yeah, it's strange how they break in the same plane a lot of the time. It's obviously a line of weakness in these teeth. I may be able to actually modify this and actually use this piece of wax to put onto this tooth, but we'll have a go. First thing I'm going to do is soften up some of this wax. I'm using a gas flame here, and I'm going to squidge that onto the broken surface of the tooth. You don't want to melt wax onto this tooth because it will soak into the porous rock, and then you've got a problem. You just want to sort of soften the wax and squidge it on there. It stays on pretty well. So I'm just going to run this over the flame. There's a bit of a knack to doing this, but you soon get the hang of it. It's not rocket science. So I'm just doubling the wax over. I've got a special wax knife. Sounds like my gas flame's about to die. Right, just going to soften that again. I'm softening it, I don't want it runny. Then we're going to squidge that into the nooks and crannies on the fossil. I'm just sort of moulding it, pushing it around onto the wax, pushing the wax onto the tooth. I'll trim off a little bit of that. Any of this wax you can melt down and reuse it. But it's, like I say, it's a modified wax, so it's quite hard wearing once it's done. You can do quite a lot with it. You don't have to worry about it. It's not too delicate once it's set. That's my base layer on there. So I've squidged that on. Like I say, I haven't melted it onto the tooth because you'll have a job to pull it off. You risk damaging the tooth pulling it off. Eventually I will melt around the edges just to seal the edge just a tiny bit with a hot knife. This is a special wax knife. It's a dental tool, but you can use any knife with an insulated handle. That doesn't matter if it gets a bit burnt. And what you do is you keep heating the blade up in the flame, and then you can just run it around and melt it and shape it. Build it up until you've got roughly the shape that you want. You want it slightly overbuilt because you can then carve it back. And this is just very roughly done at the minute. Got a lot of shaping and neatening up to do, but you can get the idea. Just to give, and you're sort of getting the profile, just to get it roughly how it's going to be. The next thing I'm going to do is gradually scrape this back until it's the right shape, and melting bits as well using the hot knife, and just shaping it until it looks just right. All these teeth are unique really. There's very few that are identical to each other. Some of them are symmetrical, and some have got quite a curve on them, and you have to, when you've looked at enough of the teeth, you can kind of get the idea about which one you're dealing with and what shape it should be. The roots are roughly, when you look at the profile of the root, they're pretty well even on most of them, symmetrical in that respect, and it's more differences in the blade. With this tooth, when you hold it up, you can see there's the long side. I think this is 5¼ inches, this one, but you can see it, or it's 5½ actually, this one, 5½ inches, and this is curving that way, and you can see by the little cracks, the expansion cracks or hydration cracks from when it fossilised, they're curving that way as well. So we know there's a little bit of asymmetry, and it's going to be curved. So I've taken that into account with how I've put this on, so that it does curve this way. Some are perfectly symmetrical, and you could build it symmetrical so that it stands up, but this one is definitely curving one direction. I've built this up with wax now. It's slightly overbuilt, and the next thing to do is to start trimming it back. When you first add the wax, if you're adding it in large quantities, it goes through quite a pliable sort of clay-like. You can mould it to a degree, and it's a good idea while it's all a bit soft to mould it and shape it into roughly the right proportion and shape, but then let it cool down for quite some time. It takes for a thick section to cool down. Once it's cool, it's quite hard then, and that's when you can start just trimming back. You can scrape, you can use the back edge or the front edge of the knife, and you scrape and you can cut, and just keep checking, and keep sort of checking your angles, and eyeball it from all different angles and make sure it looks about right, and just keep doing that until you've got the proportion and the angle of everything just right. Once you're happy with that, you can then start adding detail, and the amount of detail is up to you. I started off, when I first made some of these, I did them very stylized. They're quite simplistic, minimalistic, just the basic shape, with a few sort of, if there was a split in the root, I'd follow the split on, but keep it all shiny and smooth, with very little detail, just making sure that the proportion was right. I then started doing some more detailed ones, and I would put all these little hydration cracks and things. I'd put all those in the detailing. It will all come out in the casting. You can make them as detailed or as simple as you like, and I did several where I put in very minute details. In actual fact, I think you're better off, it's down to personal taste, but I have come to the conclusion that I prefer them somewhere halfway between the two. If you put them in too much detail in, the bronze bit can look a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't look quite right. If you don't put enough detail in, they don't have the same interest. What I tend to do is I texture the root surface so it's rough, so you have smooth enamel and a slightly rougher root, and I put some detail in, but I don't try and put serrations along the edge. Quite often they don't look very good in the bronze, and they're difficult to, when you're actually finishing the bronze, they get polished away or they don't look right. So I don't bother with the serrations on the bronze bit, and I won't put all these little cracks in. I try and just keep the enamel smooth, some texture on the root, and if there are big hydration splits or cracks in the root, I'll follow those on into the bronze. But the level of detail, it's up to you. I'm just about ready for detailing these now. I've got the proportion right. I've virtually redone this one because I wasn't happy with it, but as you can see, I think they've got the proportion right. You need to keep looking at these, because at this stage, before you start putting too much detail in, stand them up stand them next to other teeth that you've got, have a good look on the photos on the internet, look at them from all angles, you know, just keep comparing them from all angles and just make sure that it looks right, because once you've actually cast them in bronze, there's not a lot you can do about it, and the more work you put in at this stage, the better. Here's the other one I did. I'm doing it at the same time, but it's interesting actually, just to show you, only ½ an inch difference in these two teeth in size, but they are significantly different in when you actually hold them in your hand. The larger tooth is a lot heavier. That's why when you're looking at buying teeth, size is very important. ½ an inch makes quite a big difference in Megalodon teeth. But you know, this is 5½ inches, this is a fraction under 6. But, stand them side by side. There you go, you can see the difference. On the point of buying teeth, I've bought virtually all mine off eBay over the years, and there's some good sellers on eBay. There's some probably best avoiding, but when you have a look at the photos you can see which ones have been restored quite often. Obviously you only best buy unrestored fossils, and if you're buying broken ones they're going to be unrestored. I got these off a seller called RU Sharky. Really good service offered, really nice teeth. Yeah, really good seller.